Men are not toxic. Men are the answer. Welcome to the ReMasculation Podcast. I am beyond excited today to welcome a dear, dear brother of mine onto the show. His name is Gethin Aldous. You probably haven't heard of him, but you should have, because he is a true gem. And I was just joking with him about how he likes to take a back seat, and a lot of times he should be taking a front seat. But he is a film and video game maker who believes in the power of story to transform lives. He was co-director and executive producer of The Work documentary, which won a UK Gearson Award for Best International Documentary and Best Cinema Documentary. If you have not seen this film and you care about men and men's work, you need to go see it. It is, in my personal opinion, the most important documentary on men's work that exists out in the world. Gethin would probably argue with me, but this is my show, so he doesn't get a chance right now. He has also been honored with a Ron Herring Award by the Mankind Project. If you guys have not heard of the Mankind Project, check it out. They're one of the oldest and I think the largest men's work organizations in the world. They are an incredible organization that does some really, really amazing work. Gethin has been involved in men's work for over a decade and has staffed group therapy retreats at Folsom Prison with Inside Circles and the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Norfolk with the Jericho Circle. He is also the co-founder of All Kings, which is an incredible organization based on, I'd say, a parent organization that started in the UK, which is where Gethin is from, which you will note as soon as he opens his mouth with its lovely accent. And I had the distinct pleasure of being a part of the inaugural weekend here in the United States with the kickoff of the U.S. All Kings organization weekend based out of Harlem, New York City. Took a bunch of incredible humans out to the woods, but I want to let Gethin talk about All Kings and tell us a bit about what it is and why it's important. Gethin, welcome, man. It is such an honor to be sitting here with you, my brother.
Nice to be here. Yeah, let's have some fun. It's going to be good.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, would you mind just kicking us off, telling us a bit about All Kings, how it came into being, why it came into being, and why it is as important as you and I both know it to be.
Yeah, firstly, well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. Now, I'm sitting with that word, the word remasculation?
Remasculation.
Remasculation of men. Yeah, it's a nice concept. So All Kings is one of these things. I've been doing men's work, way over a decade now, probably 15 years at this point, but All Kings is one of these things that just sort of was called into existence through me. I don't think I had much of a choice about it. I got invited to Folsom, as you mentioned, which was in me sort of the epicenter of the deepest version of men's work, like in a level 4 prison, with guys who have gone to the darkest place anyone could imagine and are crawling their ways back into the light. And a lot of them never expect to be released from prison. And so they're just doing it for their own personal freedom. Nothing more than that. And then the miracle is these guys who all thought they were going to die in prison started to get released because somehow the energy and the parole board and everyone saw it and they're just like, well, go on, get out of here. And one time when I was over at Folsom, someone said, what, you fly away from New York to come and do these weekends in California? I was like, yeah. He's like, why don't you do this in New York? And it's one of those questions that just sort of landed in me. And at the same time, I'd experienced this thing called a Band of Brothers in the UK, which is a weekend for sort of formerly incarcerated and at-risk young men in the UK. And the idea was to sort of build healthy communities for these young men to be a part of. So what was happening was all these sort of, I say, if you don't take care of the young men, they'll burn the village down. And that's what was happening in the sort of streets of England. These sort of young men were just raging rampage because there was no healthy masculinity to hold them. So the intention was to bring that idea to New York through All Kings. And then COVID sort of kicked in, and during COVID, it was quite hard to get young guys just to sort of sit on a Zoom call and kind of do their work. So it ended up being a lot more about sort of older men. So ultimately, what All Kings does is we build communities to support formerly incarcerated men and at-risk youth to sort of transition back into community and to live healthy lives. And, you know, after 4 years of this, it's more than anything, it's just about the community. And it's probably more non-formerly incarcerated and non-at-risk guys in the community. Because the idea was never to sort of other the formerly incarcerated guys. Like, you can only hang with other formerly incarcerated guys. So it's trying to sort of find this balance so we can all see the beauty in each other. And one of the sort of magic moments in the sort of healing of the men in Folsom is when these guys who were told their whole lives that they were fuck-ups, that they were this, that they were killers, that they were savages, that they were, you know, a scourge on society, saw themselves healing another man, saw that their gifts and their pain and their suffering and their all of this stuff can now be transmuted into sort of healing for other men. And that's the aha moment. So bringing these sort of formerly incarcerated guys who have all, you know, guys who've done a lot of time in prison and got their way out, they've gone pretty deep in themselves. And that's kind of a given. And I mean, a lot of them have, not all, but a lot of them have. And they bring that sort of wisdom. And then, they start to see themselves in this completely different light. I'm this healer, I'm this visionary, I'm not all these other things I was told. So it works on so many levels. It's just so exciting to be a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is exciting. And I'm just so thrilled to be talking to you about this, because it is such an important thing. And it's a very big piece for me. I think the reform of prison is a very interesting hot button topic right now. For me, what's exciting about the potential for a road back, for really, if we really want to pretend that we're trying to rehabilitate people, that we really are actually trying to give them a different opportunity, how can we help provide a road back and empower them, like you said, with that aha moment of, I'm not here to give you something that you need because I'm better than you or this or that, but like to help them get what we got in their own way, in their own place. And, you know, again, it's like, wow, I've had some conversations with some men who have been in some really dark places. And it's like, what could possibly be more valuable than a man who has gone to those places and then come back from those pits of darkness that few ever touch, to be a beacon for others, to be a teacher and a mentor. It's profound, truly profound. So thank you for being a part of that process. And yeah,
it's an extraordinary thing. And it's sort of, I was thinking about this the other day, that like there's a lot of like MKP and Sacred Sons and other sort of big men's organizations. A lot of those are about men finding sort of their, you know, Sacred Sons, they do sort of sacred boxing, you know, so it's finding your masculine power. And, you know, it's a warrior weekend for Mankind Project. These guys have that. The guys that they're like, oh, the warrior's online. The warrior's online. You know, we sort of separate the shadow warrior out. So it's not, for them, it's which is why it's called All Kings. For them, it's like, where's my king? Where's my ground? Like I can call up the warrior when it's needed, but it's how do I learn to call it up from that king place in a healthy way, not the destructive warrior, not the you know, I'm feeling something I don't like, so I'm gonna just break the whole thing.
Right.
So it's sort of transmuting that energy. And then, as you say, that the you know, I believe, and I've experienced this so many times, people who have been wounded in the way that a lot of guys in prison have, like deep early trauma, the ones who go back there, it's like it's right down there, right where you right down where you hurt the most is where your gifts are. For them, the pain is so deep and so all-encompassing, and so it takes a lot to get down into those sort of depths. But then down there, you know, once they do get down there, the magic they bring back out with them, it's one of the things that just draws me to this work. Like, I just learned so much from these men, time and time again, and the depth of their friendships and and also as we do this men's work, one of the things we do is very interested in sort of parts of you and parts of me and healing different parts. When a part of you is killed, and for some of the guys, a part of you is killed on numerous occasions, that is not a part you want to mess with. Like, you want to, lock that in a tight little cage and stuff that down and hope it never, gets triggered and brought out into the light again. And what we're trying to help these guys do is go and meet that part again, but in a safe way.
Yeah.
And find out what it's doing. Why is it protecting you in such a way? What is it protecting?
Yeah, and you and I both know intimately what parts work is, what those processes involve, and how effective they can be, and how powerful. And just the hair on the back of my neck stands up talking about it, because these archetypal realities that, to me, men's work is a technology. It's something that belongs to all of us. And I don't care where you come from, man. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care how you identify or what your pronouns are or what continent you're from. Like, there's an understanding of this technology that goes beyond language even, that is there and is very real. And once it gets activated, you can ask anybody on the planet, like, everybody knows what a king is. Everybody knows what these archetypes are. So I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of for those of us who haven't experienced this type of work, this depth of work. And I know that both you and I will want to encourage all men to find these organizations, to step into this work. It's been such a big part of, I know, our healing journeys, but what a gift. Would you be open to sharing a bit about, and I know we can't give it all away, right? But what parts work is, how you understand it, and how you particularly like to utilize it, as you said, right, to help someone go into their wound and recognize that that's where the gold is, that's where the gift is in the transmutation of that deepest of wounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of different aspects to men's work. Some of it is just a connection, some of it is just being seen, some of it is listening, some of it is just these sort of big energetic releases of, a safe way of letting your anger out. Is mission work. What am I here for? What am I, there's a lot of different aspects for it. But the one, as it happens, I just finished doing a weekend, this weekend just gone, really around parts work. And more and more so, I'm starting to believe that that's some of the deepest and most profound healing there is. So to explain what parts work is, it's that idea that we're a sum of a bunch of parts. Some of those parts are our own story and our own mythology, and some of those parts are external and these archetypal energies that sort of exist in all of us and kind of flowing through it. So, in me, there's and this is something I've only just been really accessing recently. There's a wounded 2-year-old who has been running the ship quite a bit, but hard to get at because a lot of that was kind of pre-language. There's most definitely a wounded 11-year-old. There's definitely a wounded sort of 15-year-old. There's also, there's some of my wounds. There's also a real go-getter. I call him the wolf, who just makes things happen and goes to get it. There's this one of the men that's really sort of guided me in this work is this man called Bill Wick, and Bill was one of the first survivors of HIV. He was that wave, like everyone around him was dying, and he just had on long enough for the first wave of drugs to come out. And so he got a disability pension, and he just was called to just devote his life to this work. And he was drawn into parts work, and then he's just spent 20 years or so going into Folsom Prison 2 or 3 times a year, going home, analysing it, breaking it down, reading everything you could possibly read on the subject, and just getting a more and more sort of deeper and clearer picture of how these parts show up in us. And he's just created this wonderful sort of series of very simple techniques of allowing us to kind of explore our parts. And I'll give you an example. This weekend I've had this sort of kind of knot in my stomach for a while, and it's funny. Is every time I sort of get faced with someone else's anger, even if it's not an anger that's going to have any danger towards me, even somebody who works for me, their anger has been sort of stirring up this knot in my stomach, and I'm like, what is this thing? And so we were doing parts work this weekend, and the facilitator said to me, well, what do you want to work on? I want to work on this feeling in my stomach. Okay, become that feeling. So allow my whole body, so not just to exist in my stomach, but allow my whole body. And this is where dance and movement comes in. So my sort of practice of 5 rhythms and other things I'm sure you've talked about here. This is where that comes in. And I allowed myself to completely become this tension in my stomach. So my whole body sort of started to crunch over. And then the idea was, then the facilitator said, can I speak to that part? So instead of sort of even me talking to myself, talking to this part myself, like he's like, let me talk directly to this feeling in your stomach. And it gets into a strange place quite quickly. So here's my current working theory. And this gets woo-woo as fuck. But anyway.
But it works.
It works on such an incredible level. Like the feel that I witnessed this weekend, the sort of healing feel. It works. So the idea is that every part of you that is a part of you has a positive intention. Even the part of you that's murdering people, that's smashing the place up, that's destroying absolutely everything. It believes, it learned that behavior at some point in your life, and it might be when you're 2 years old, that smashing things up was actually the way to get you the safety and the peace that you needed. So that behavior could have been learned at any point in your life, even pre-language. And that behavior at some point in your young mind, your juvenile mind, your inexperienced mind served you. And we keep playing out that pattern until someone stops and says to that part, what do you want? A part's like, I want Gethin to be safe. Well, what are you doing to help Gethin be safe? I'm smashing everything around me so nothing can hurt me ever again. And is that keeping him safe? Well, in some ways it is, but in other ways it's causing this other sort of, and you can communicate with this part and ask this part to change its behavior. And every part of you that is a part of you, and that's when we get to the weird stuff, and every part of you is a part of you has a positive intention, and you just have to help it find it. And you can really reprogram your parts on such a deep, unconscious, fundamental level, and it changes stuff.
Yeah.
Then you get into the because you have to ask the part this very, very important question. And the question is, are you, and I'll use you as an example, Michael, if you don't mind, are you a part of Michael? And if the answer is yes, then we know what to do. We got to work out what you're trying to do and where you learned this behavior and what you'd rather be doing. If the answer is no, then we get into the weird stuff.
Oh.
So we get into the weird stuff, and it's, I'm just going to say what it could be called. It could be called past lives. It could be called demons. It could be called extraterrestrials. It could be called, I think those are sort of the main categories. And it could be that language, like in all of our films and movies, there are demons, there are dark forces, there are dark energies, there are, So it could be that language is the only way that our psyches can connect with those energies. And as Joseph Campbell likes to say, that which the tongue is never soiled. Like it's the things that our language can't fully understand. So we have to create a way in order to understand, So, and all I know is if I treat this, so I'll talk about me. This thing is in my stomach, was either a demonic or a sort of attachment. And this is not from like the power of Christ compels. It's not like exorcism stuff. Sure. Which is quite funny when you think about exorcism. When I think about my understanding now, sort of spirit release therapy, which is cool. The sort of the Catholic version of it is like cast it out, and it's so aggressive and sort of attacking this thing. And again, I don't know, let's say it gets into the strain, but we actually invite the energies to leave. And what you find is the energy actually wants to leave. So this energy, which just isn't a part of you, and again, you can decide what you want to call that thing. One doesn't actually want to be held, doesn't want to hold on to you either. And if you give it the opportunity to leave, it does leave. Yeah, anyway, as I said, it gets into the weird. And I'll tell you what happened to me this weekend. Okay.
Please, come on, man, come on.
We're inviting this energy to leave and inviting the forces of light to come down and surround it and take it to, and it wouldn't go. It was sort of holding on. And then it was like, well, invite someone it trusts to come and get it. So again, it's just imagination and energy and myth and story, and so we invited this friendly energy to come and get it. And I was lying on my back and I could just sort of see this light. And then I saw this flash of this group of like dark demonic energies reach down out of the light. And then the light sort of got stronger and sort of held on to whatever it was that was coming out of me. And then I said to the facilitator, I said, this demonic's coming to get it. He's like, not there. And then they sort of went away again. And then this thing sort of left me. And all I know is that since then, it's only been 3 days, this feeling in my stomach. And then we sort of clean up afterwards. Then I have this sort of sacred space where all my parts live inside, which is part of this other men's work that we do. And there's this sort of bear that kind of protects that space. And so once it had gone, it was like, well, anytime I'm feeling that feeling again, invite this bear to just come into the space and take care of my 2-year-old, which is the part that this thing was attached to.
Yeah.
This feeling in my stomach, I just invite this bear to come in, this energetic bear to come into my stomach and care for my 2-year-old, and it goes away. And I found this profound sense of peace the last 4 or 5 days since this process happened.
As you're saying that, I'm feeling that in my own body, through a computer screen across the country. Gethin in New York and me in Colorado.
And I also want to own the part of me that's feeling some shame about talking about this. It's feeling a little embarrassed about this language.
Sure. Well, I love talking about these things because I find, that people are like, oh, can we talk about this? But everybody knows what you're talking about. We all come from some type of religious or spiritual substructure. You cannot divorce a human being from some type of connection to something beyond themselves, as much as we've tried through the Enlightenment and through postmodernism and all these other things that we're experiencing right now as a culture. But I know that people can understand what we're talking about here. And the thing I love about these particular flavors of men's work is that to me, it's no different than shamanism. It is a form of shamanism. And as I see shamanism, it's the ability to induce non-ordinary states for the sake of healing. And the proof is in the pudding. Do you feel better afterwards? Yeah. Does it matter what happened? No, not necessarily. I'm curious about it. You're curious about it. I guarantee people that are listening just like, well, what was it, man? What was the things? It's like, we love talking about this, but I hope that you can, one of the things I appreciate most about you, Gethin, is your ability to acknowledge what's happening for you in real time and acknowledging the shame that you're feeling and the degree of permission that you give to so many people through your embodiment of your capacity to speak what is true for you and remind men particularly, but humans, as I've seen you do repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly, that there is something universal to all of us and that it's okay to not be okay. And by being okay with not being okay is how we get to be okay again. And that is what happens on these weekends, these non-ordinary states where a guy like yourself, who I've known as a brother for a long time, I watch step into this role as shaman, psychopomp, transmuter of energies in a way that just, anyone and everyone can do, and we can do for each other. And so it's a profound thing, and I just so deeply appreciate you sharing this and being able to share this, because it's something that we I think we need as men, and that you model really beautifully. So thank you.
And and thank you.
Yeah.
No, that.
Yeah.
And what the genius of Bill's sort of technique that he's come is he's really distilled it down to this incredibly sort of bite-sized series of techniques. The main one being active listening.
Yeah.
Which is 3 very simple steps. Listen, echo back, maybe 4. Listen, echo back, seek clarification. I think that's it. And silence. Yeah, and silence. Yeah. And sometimes you just don't say anything. And, if you try those steps, and there's a bunch of things not to do. You don't give any advice. There's a whole list of things not to do. But if you do those sort of very, very simple, ask someone, what do you want? What do you want from this weekend? You come on the weekend. What do you want from this weekend? And just following those steps, it goes deep, really quickly.
Yeah.
Because we all have, and this is my belief, is we all have, and that's why no advice is such an important thing for me. No unsolicited advice. Sometimes guys ask for advice, and that's okay. But I believe we all just have such wisdom inside us. We have everything, the resource for everything we need inside us at any point in time. It's just like, how do I access that? How do I access that part of myself? That part with the connection to all that is, that part that, knows what I need in an environment. Like, how do I quiet the wounded parts, shouting and screaming for attention, and just, how do I be a king in my own kingdom? And bring my sovereign energy to my own parts.
Yeah, that's why to me, in my experiences, with men's work and facilitation, and then taking that into coaching and into the coaching space, and the profundity of not jumping to advice giving, of realizing that this person already knows what they need to do, they just don't know it yet, and how just deep listening and reflection empowers them to go in and find that gold for themselves, which is so much more valuable than just being told something by someone else. And in a way, it feels like a form of robbery sometimes, of robbing someone of the aha moment that can come from yourself, versus, oh, well, this is what you need to do, take 2 of these and go home and, sit and spin, whatever it is, And so, the group program that I run for my guys is called Kingdom, because it's about understanding the different parts of you that have to be brought online and understood and encouraged and loved and put in their place sometimes, in order to come together as a whole, in order for that king energy to come online. The warrior, the magician, the lover has to be integrated. And through that integration, that king energy just naturally flows. And obviously we're talking about shadow, the integrated aspect, and then the shadow aspect of each of these archetypes. But again, these archetypes are universal, which is why they're so beautiful and so important to be able to dive into and explore. And again, why I really view this work as a technology that, when it is applied, I've never seen it not work, ever. It's like a light switch. Like when you connect the circuit, the light turns on every time. So there's something really powerful here that belongs to all of us, that is accessible and should be, and is and can be accessible to all of us, to be able to step into this work, to find this work. And I really want to encourage people to, and I'll list all of Gethin's stuff at the end of the show, so you can find All Kings, you can find even MKP or Sacred Sons or any of these organizations, because I really believe there's no need for competition in the men's workspace. And one of my frustrations is seeing some of that, the shadow masculine, siloing and holding on to mine. This is my men's work, my form of it. It's like, well, yeah, IP, I get it. Intellectual property, I get it. But this belongs to all of us. So how do we get, there's so much room for more that what are we doing? Arguing and bickering.
I remember when I started All Kings, one of the, I had a funny conversation with the guys from Band of Brothers. Like, well, why must we end up in the same country at the same time? How do we, like, we go to the bar and we celebrate?
That's right.
The fact that this is happening. Yeah, I mean, this technology was gifted to me, and I'm going to gift it to anybody who wants it. This is open source all day, and it's, this stuff's as old as time. It's been known for millennia. It's been forgotten for millennia. It's done the dance in and out. It's been a threat. It's been controlled. It's been pushed down. It's been released. It's been, it's done the dance of time. But I think it's always been there.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, one of my visions and goals is to open source it. I loved what Elon did when he open sourced the battery technology for Tesla. It's like, whoa, did he really just do that? Like
he just did it with Twitter as well, with the source code of Twitter. It's like, damn, Elon, damn.
Yeah, he's on to something. And I really feel the same way.
Yeah, it's certainly the way to, people can't say your algorithm's doing this and that. It's like, well, here's my algorithm.
Yeah, look at it. Here you go. Yeah, if you got, yeah.
Yeah, Facebook, TikTok, if everyone did that.
Holy smokes, man.
Game changer.
Yeah. I think that's why he's getting so much pushback. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if that's his $44 billion gift to the world, then I'll take it.
Yeah, no kidding. Isn't it interesting to watch how much pushback he's getting and how many people are suddenly turning on him or descending on him right now? It's a whole other conversation we can have, obviously, but.
Well, there's a lot of, he brings shadow, he brings light. It's
almost like he's a person that also makes mistakes, but something I like about him is he seems to do his best to own him when he does, which seems, kind of like what we're talking about here today. So, I think this is a good segue point to sort of shift into something I wanted to talk about. And there are these broader terms that, the show is about, this idea of remasculation. Not that I know what it needs to be or what it's supposed to be, but very much my own journey of sort of being born into a culture that, unbeknownst to me, did have an effect in emasculating me in some ways. And by that, I mean divorcing me from my essential masculinity. And I want to be careful throwing blanket terms around here, but there's this idea of patriarchy and this idea of toxic masculinity. And, you were speaking about demons earlier, but I have this real sense from the uniformity that I hear from all of the men that I work with. And I think maybe you can speak to this as well, but that men have been demonized in a way and certainly demoralized right now in a way of not quite knowing what to do or where to fit in, or, that men are causing so many of the problems. But there's some really interesting statistics around, there are, as we talked about earlier, there are a lot more men in prison. There are a lot more men homeless on the street. There are a lot more men who are the victims of violent crime, who commit suicide, who die in war. Men do worse in school. They don't live as long as women do. There are a lot of things that men really struggle with. And I feel like right now it's convenient to sort of bash men and blame men. And the core tenet of radical feminism, and again, I'm the son of a second wave feminist. I believe in women, and I believe in the necessary freedom they should have to do what they want to do, but that there is this idea instantiated in a form of radical feminism in the terminology of patriarchy, that men are oppressors and women have been oppressed by men as a class generally. And what that does to men and women in the way they think about men and women. Men, oppressor, women, oppressed. And the harm I've seen it do to men, the harm that it did to me, and thinking that, oh my God, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm part of the problem. And it doesn't have anything to do with what I've actually done in my life. I am this inheritor of this original sin of being a man. I know I just said a lot, but I'd love to just sort of pitch that to you and sort of see how it lands for you, what you're seeing right now, what your own journey has been. And yeah, well, let's just go there.
I mean, it's, there's a bunch of the size, as you said, you just said a lot of stuff there. One of the things I'm really conscious of is, if you want to rebalance, the power imbalance that does exist in the world, be it through race, poverty, sex, your gender, you're not going to do it by pulling one side down. You do it by raising everyone else up. And I think if we start with that as the sort of the foundation, men have done some bad things in the world. Men have done some terrible things in the world, and men have done some extraordinary things in the world.
Yes.
And it's this expression, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We want to.
Yeah.
How do we? How do we allow a healthy expression of masculinity? I mean, it kind of makes me. I mean, you want to talk about BDSM?
Sure, man.
I just went there.
Come on, bro. So
it's this idea of it's a dicey territory, I know, but there's an idea of the feminine wanting to be contained by a healthy masculine.
Yeah,
wanting to feel the power of that containment, but from a place of really trusting the sacred masculine, from the sacred feminine. And I'm talking about energies here. I'm not talking about man or woman, or
that's right.
Masculine want to be contained by the sacred feminine, and I think it's. Everybody wants it. I think we want, the feminine wants to feel the power that. One of the things we did this last weekend, it was the first time. All Kings is a men's organization, and it is the first time we've invited women into the space. It happened in a sort of kind of a miracle way. So I was sort of seeding all queens. So I did a screening of the work one time at this re-entry program. And 2/3 of the people who were coming out of prison in this program were men, and 1/3 were women. And I had this beautiful thing to offer the men. I had nothing to offer the women, and it hurt me. And so since then, every time I do a screening of the film, someone says, "Where's this for women?" And I say, "The reason it exists for men is because I started. Are you that woman?" And I never heard from them again. So I've been wandering around for years saying this thing, until finally I got a yes from this woman, and we started seeding this thing. And then we decided to do this parts weekend, and Bill was like, well, one of the two best facilitators on the planet of this, the two people I want to bring are women. So do you have any women you can invite into the space? And we had these 3 women that we were seeding this thing. So we ended up doing a men's weekend with 30 men and 4 women.
Yeah.
And this is 30 men going there. This is 30 men allowing their rage out, their energy, their shadow towards women, their light, their dark, letting it out. And these 4 women, and I've spoken to them all since, all felt so safe. They couldn't believe the way this community of men loved each other, cared for each other, and without being the rescuer of the women, because that's where just shadow stuff comes in. That's where it all gets real dicey, when men are like, I got to save you, woman, from your feelings and your emotions and your and I'm going to, that's not containment, that's rescuing. Yeah. And there's a fine little line there that we walk between.
Very narrow bridge.
Yeah. Very narrow bridge. And it's everything. And I did not, even for a second, and I'm just reflecting on this now in this conversation, feel a man in there, in that room, feel they needed to rescue any one of those women. And those women were feeling a lot of things they were feeling, and it was not And that's what we're capable of as men.
I'd even say that's what brings out the best in us, are those opportunities, and what's so missing. Because man, you hit it, man. Because this is what I've been seeing too, and what I feel is really it. It's like bringing the men and women together. This episode is sponsored and brought to you by One Golden Thread. The gold inside us is the thread that unites us. Conscious clothing for a more conscious humanity. Go to www.onegoldenthread.com to learn more. And here's a golden ticket for you. Use my personal code BATES11, that's B as in boy, ATES 11 at checkout for an 11% discount site-wide. OneGoldenThread.com. Get threaded. Bringing the men's work and the women's work together in the same space, and letting the men see the women doing their work, and letting the women see the men doing their work, and how we show up in community, which is what we've all been divorced from, whether it was our peoples, 2,000 years ago by the Romans, or, our brothers and sisters in dark skin more recently, being divorced from their traditions in terrible ways. But there's a path back. And I'm so stoked, man, because obviously, like, having women in the space affects the way the men show up when they don't know when they know there are no women there. But then having the women there is different.
I don't know if it did change anything.
Yeah.
I think it just added. I don't think anyone... I don't think so. And I still believe, I still believe fundamentally, and I'm a work in progress. This might be changed tomorrow. But I still, right in this exact moment in time, I still believe there's a place, as it was in the village for thousands of years. The men go away.
Yes.
And they become initiated, and they step into it. And the women go away, and they do their. And then there's a reintegration back into the village from this new place. And so every single man at this weekend had been through the initial All Kings initiation weekend. They'd gone off with the men into the woods and touched their shadow, touched their king, and gone deep into, and then, so those were the men holding this space for these women. And these women had all done their own work, and all in their own different ways, but they were walking to a space of initiated men, of men who have gone to that place, have allowed themselves to really look inside and go deep. And, the more we can do is why these conversations are important, and normalize men going to those places.
Yep. The
safer women will feel, and the less of toxic femininity is going to come out.
Boom.
Yeah. A word that, is a, oh no, we can't talk about that, but
we have to.
There's a toxic feminine, there's a toxic masculine. I mean, there is.
Absolutely.
Well, not call it toxic.
There's a shadow, and there's a bright side to every movement, to every tradition, to all of it. Absolutely. And anyone who says otherwise is a fool.
One of my, this just came up for me. When we were at Burning Man together, can we talk about it? Yeah.
Of course we could talk about
it. Yeah. You and your partner Touch were doing this men and women's circle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I do circle work my whole life. I'm not doing it here. I'll see you later. And then your storm kicked up, and the only place that you could do it was in the place that I happened to be sat.
Yeah.
So you brought the thing to me, and we sort of split apart. We did some stuff together. We separated. We came back together again. And there was a question.
I paid a sorcerer a lot of money to create that sandstorm, Gethin, to keep you there, so you know. Just saying it.
And there was a question that you asked when we came back together. So the men had done their bit, the women had done it, and we came back together. So you've done a sort of, a very small version of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Together, separate, together again. And you asked, does everyone here feel safe after having done that, and now come back together? And I believe everyone except me said yes. Mm-hmm. I was the only person that didn't feel safe. And then you asked me why I didn't feel safe. And it was like, because there's a part of me that I'm afraid of. There's a shadow predator that came online and we came back together. And I just got a glimpse of him. And I'm like, And being in this space with these women, knowing that that shadowed predator is in me, made me feel unsafe.
Wow.
And it's, what's that James Hollis quote? We can never heal from the Holocaust until we all take responsibility. So we can never all come together till I take responsibility for the parts of myself that do damage to the feminine.
That's right.
Hurt the feminine. That can show up from my sort of childish, needy place, and I need you to mother me and protect me, and from a shadowy place, and not showing up for my king and meeting you and your queen.
Yeah. But your ability to do that, the work that you've done to show up in that space, empowered every one of those men in that split moment that you were able to catch the glimpse of that shadow. Now you have all of us watching it and watching your back and trusting that we as a collective, as a community, can watch that shadow with you and help you draw it out through, whatever means. I mean, there's something so powerful about, and why I'm so fascinated by this, and where my work is right now is like, I want to do more of that framework. Like, yes, men's work, yes, women's work, but then together, separate, back together, separate, back together. Because there's so much there. And there's what a gift that was. I don't remember her name, and obviously I wouldn't share it anyway, just to keep that container confidential. But do you remember how impacted those women were when you shared that?
Yeah, there was a woman like, oh my God, I've been seeing this in men, and I've asked them, they've always denied it.
Yeah.
They've always denied its existence.
Yeah.
And that's our shame.
Absolutely.
No, that doesn't, this dark part of me doesn't exist, and I don't want to. That's right. I sort of feel like I mentioned BDSM, but didn't go there. But it's how do we create a safe space so I can allow that dark masculine, like the destroyer, this energy, but safe, like contained. How can I create a space where you, the feminine, can experience that from your submissive, like, okay, I'm going to allow the power of this thing to just engulf me from a very structured and safe and beautifully contained place. Allow me to experience it and the feminine to experience it. It's not something I've really dabbled in. I'm just into the concept of it. But and this idea of the feminine, like, submitting to the power of the energy. It's a scary thing, and how do we as men wield that power? Like, can we have physical power over women? We have physical power over them, and it's how can we use that in a way that's healthy, that makes them feel safe without rescuing it.
Well, and that's it, right? And there's the toxic feminine piece of their ability to have power over us emotionally. And to manipulate us emotionally, that quintessential feminine shadow of manipulation, and being able to bring that. But again, it's like your ability to own and hone your shame, speak it into the space, knowing that, your whole body is like, fuck, I don't really want to do this, but you do it anyway, gives permission to these women to have this aha moment, which they then share, which pops the space. So there's the technology in action, stemming from your capacity through your work and the work that you devoted yourself to, and the enacting of this technology to literally heal and to just watch this. I mean, I know this as a facilitator, but to get to watch the technology ping through the space and impact someone else, and that aha moment, right, of someone sharing something that they think they're going to be shamed for, or guilted for, or punished for, and it ends up being the thing that opens the whole room. And they get to see the gift that was contained in their willingness to share, and then realize the pain of, wow, I've been withholding that all my life. We've been taught to withhold these truths and to push them down. But that, go ahead.
There's another step to it as well, which is where it gets really interesting. So then I was sort of in shame about my shadow predator. Well, no, I didn't even see myself, just my predator. I saw the idea of my predator. And I remember, I don't even know who it was. I was at some party and I was telling this story. And this woman was like, "Oh, I want to see your predator."
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, but it's all about consent.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's it. It's all about consent.
Yes.
Would you like to be my predator in a consensual, safe? Yeah.
Right.
Let me feel that. What's that like?
The best sexual experience of a woman's life versus actual rape, right? When the consent isn't there, and that amazing bridge that exists to be able to go into these parts and access these spaces and be able to play in that energy, and regardless of what body you're in, right? Like you said, these are energies that we all have and all get to wield and get to explore. And when it's framed in a way that is safe, it gets to be like, ooh, yeah, I want to see that predator. I want to go hunting with that predator that lives in you. Like if I have to go into combat, I need to know that part of you is there. That can, while I'm sleeping in my trench, I often use this metaphor because it feels so real for so many men, for what we've been through for the last 5,000 years in our fight against toxic masculinity and patriarchy and all these battlefields where we've been pitted against each other, killing each other for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But trusting that your predator is going to be online when I'm sleeping so I don't get my throat slit. And so that we don't let the enemy pass between us and go back to our village and rape and kill our women and children. And the intensity of what men hold in our bodies and the pressure we put on ourselves in the modern day to perform and to produce and to provide and to protect. And the intensity of that, because for so long it was those stakes. And so there's so much here, man. There's so much here. And just like,
there really is. And it's how we, as I say, it's how we allow it out in a safe way. Because there is, as you say, there's this beauty in the masculine.
Oh yeah.
There's this wonder and this, we build bridges, we we do all there's all this sort of masculine energy. We shape the world. We go out into the village and we get what's needed and we bring it back and we provide and we, on the sort of simplest sort of form of it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. And it's just like, how do we stop that toxic part of ourselves, which just run a bunch of tanks into someone else's country and murder everybody, whatever
right.
Life is.
Right. And I can really understand people making that error of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because we've had so many instances in very recent history of those shadows of men and the shadows of masculinity committing such unspeakable atrocities. I totally get why the radical feminists feel that way. I totally get. I've met women who have never had a positive experience with a man in their whole life. How can I blame them for being suspicious of men, of extending to them what was extended to extended to men what was extended to them against their will and without their consent. So it's like, how do we start to separate out the brilliance from the shadow and start to celebrate those aspects and then keep an eye on those shadows? And I think we've hit it in this podcast. We need community. We need groups. I need brothers like you that I can go as deep as you and I have gone in process work, surrounded by men just weeping and wailing, to throwing down on dance floors at Burning Man and touching the extremity of the human experience, because I trust you, because we've been in emotional combat together. We've been to these places, and then the trust builds and man, I would trust you with just about anything based on what I've seen from you and what I've experienced by your side. I can't think of any scenario where, I'd be like, nah, I'm not Gethin. It's like, that's an incredible thing. And then we extend that to a small friend group, then we extend that to our larger community, and we have to remember this technology and that it's already here. We just have to activate it and come back together in these groups and be brave enough to share our shadows and our fears, knowing that it's actually going to be the medicine that at least one person in that group absolutely needed, and why they came there that night and they didn't even know it. And that's where that magic woo-woo kind of thing starts to creep in, because there is something bigger than ourselves operating behind it. I mean,
can I share the story of that grief circle we did together in Burning Man?
absolutely.
So I had
Thank you for asking.
I'm telling you whoever's listening as opposed, because you know the story, but
Well, but thank you for demonstrating your trustability, because I know you would never intentionally share something that was done in a confidential space. I know you would never do that. I know you're a human, so there might be a moment where you forgot and did that, but I know that you're tracking at such a level that the chances of that happening are very small. And if it did, that you would own it, and we would have a process or something that would reconnect us, you know?
I mean, in Folsom, that was the work we did in Folsom. That was so hammered home.
Yeah.
Because a mistake is life and death.
Absolutely.
You walk out there and you say what happened in there, people get killed for that.
Yep.
So it's something I hold incredibly dear. Yeah. But anyway, all right. So this, I'd lost my best
circle. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my best friend died of a brain tumor just over a year ago. In fact, we buried him a year ago today. So
Wow.
same with that today. And I walked him home. I spent he lives in the UK, and I did 5 trips to the UK. And I left him on the Tuesday, Wednesday he fell asleep, and Thursday he died. And this was a kid who I've been best friends with since I was 13. And we'd been through everything together, and we both got into the film industry together, and he went into, the day he got a job as art director on Star Wars 7 was just like,
what?
Had all these sort of parallels in our lives together.
Yeah.
And he died of a brain tumor, and at All Kings we have a grief circle that we do on our weekends.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing ritual, and it's an opportunity to grieve. And I grieved really, really deeply on 2 of the weekends. Like, really allowed myself to just cry from the depths of my being. And this grief was so deep, and so we found ourselves at Burning Man with you and another brother that we've done a lot of men's work with, and the woman who was leading the dance that day was like, "Okay, we're going to circle. We're going to do a grief dance." And there was another woman who just lost her husband. She sort of stepped in, and I'm like, "Oh, no, lady, don't be setting me off now. If I caught this bad boy, I don't know where this is going to go." And and it sort of pulled me in. And it came in 2 waves. And this is why I wanted to talk about this, because the first wave was just me allowing myself to go there, and I cried, and it was really, profoundly deep. But it was, I got to the edge of the cliff, and I didn't want to jump. I didn't want to jump. I mean, it was deep enough to get to the edge of that cliff, but there was I'm not going. And I sort of pulled myself out of it, and I was standing on the dance, and there was you there and this other guy. And I just sort of and then something in my body said, I need Michael's energy right now. I need the way he holds the masculine right now. And I walked over to you, and we sort of stood. I just came out and just looked at you, and you kind of danced around, and you were just like, "Oh, okay." And you sort of held this thing with me. And then you did this thing where you sort of, you just dropped down onto one knee and put your hand up like that, and sort of invited me to come down and just connect hands. And I remember there was this point where I was like, "What's he doing here?" Oh, well, I'll just go with it. And there's something about we just connected hands, and something in my whole body felt safe. And I just went again. And I went all the way this time, all the way into the grief, into the anguish, into the unfairness, into my fear of death, into what the fuck are we even doing here, into all of it. And you held that for me. And there was a point where I sort of stood up and I turned around, and this other friend of ours, he came in and he held me he brought a different energy to it. So he was sort of staring in my eyes. I had my back to you, like leaning against you, and you're holding that. And then a lot of women who including my wife, circled us. And I felt this strength of the masculine holding me, the healthy masculine holding me in my deep, deep, deep grief, giving me permission to go anywhere I needed to fucking go, and that they were going to hold me. And then I had the feminine holding the outside container in such a fucking profound way. And yeah, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. It was so healing, so healing. And and the thing that sort of came out of it from me was, I don't think I'm alone in my grief. I don't think I'm the only person to experience loss on that level. But I don't think many men have somewhere to put it and have a brotherhood that can hold it for them. That's
I see you, brother.
Thank you, Michael, for that gift you gave me that day. Thank you.
It was an honor. It was an honor to feel that aliveness in you and know, but also not know. And then watch myself be moved and have an impulse come through me and check in with it to see if it was mine, my ego's or something else. And it was. And so I didn't act on it. And then the next impulse came through and I checked, and it was bigger than me. And it told me to kneel before a true king.
You had a previous sort of command came through, and you were like, no, that's not the one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't remember doing that with my hand. I don't. But I remember the vibration of that experience, and the hairs on the back of my neck up, and then feeling the presence of like wings around us, and looking and seeing the women, just like, again, the technology, spirit, whatever it is, working. And
you just gave me a blessing there, and I moved past it because I had a question. I want to allow it. You said I'm knelt before a true king, and I can feel all of my humble wanting to push that away. And that's a disservice to you and the blessing that you just gave me. So
yeah, if I may project a bit, I see you as a reluctant king in a lot of the ways that I am, and a lot of the ways that I think so many of the leaders we need are. And, we talked about this briefly before the show, but there is a humility that I see in you that is so beautiful. And there's a part of it that I want to fight, because fuck you, bro. Like, you are someone that I see as a leader and as a king. And I know a lot of people and a lot of men, and I need you to claim that throne, because if you don't, the narcissist does, the shadow king does. And we have so much of that in our culture, right? So, there's just and we all need that, right? We all need that push. But yeah, you blessed me, and you blessed the space by, again, being willing to go into something, and through you giving yourself permission to do that, called in the technology and everyone else who just kind of watched themselves know what to do without knowing what to do.
it's funny because I met a part of myself this weekend that you just spoke to. So there's my king is humble. My king doesn't need recognition. There's another part of me which it is was called up. I was like, what's the part of me that's in control most of the time? And I gave it a name, and it's English poet. It's called the governor. The governor,
Yep.
the governor's like, hell yeah, I'm a badass motherfucker, man. Hell yeah, I can own that shit. Hell yeah, look at the tribe this fucking created around here. Look at this fucking circle that's going on here, and look at this power that I brought together. And I like the governor. I kind of like, and it wasn't from this like egotistical way or the narcissistic way. It was just a recognition of, the parts of me that do and create and move and change and make things happen. And, that part's there. And I have to honor that part. And every now and again, allow him out and allow him to just be seen.
Yeah.
In all of his glory and all of his doing and all of his, and then there's my king, which was another part that we sort of embodied over the weekend. And that's the part that's connected to everything. And that's the part that knows I'm this spiritual being and I'm here and I'm just in service. And my mission and my calling comes through me and I'm in service to that mission. And I don't need to claim, I don't need to be seen for it, and it's those two parts exist in me. I think you could probably see the difference in the energy in me. Like
For sure.
That's the beauty of parts work. It's like, okay, well, let me visit with this part. Let me play this part for a bit. Let me feel it. It was acting.
But then it's like you're never more seen than in those moments when you actually let yourself be honest and in the suck of an emotion or a need or a fear or shame. Yeah. I want to acknowledge that we are at time, the time that we've given ourselves, and I can't think of a better place to end necessarily. And maybe we'll end by, I'd love to ask for you to close us out with a blessing. Maybe a blessing for men, for your friend, for whatever it is. I trust you. I trust you to know what that is, and I trust you to decline if you need to. But I don't know. That's what's coming through me in this moment. So,
okay. We're going to do 2 blessings. That's okay.
It is.
One is more of an acknowledgement than a blessing, and that's a blessing. Okay, it's a blessing. And that's to bless you, Michael. That's to bless you. And to bless this, there's a form of pure and clean masculine energy that I've watched you embody more and more and more in this 4 or 5 years. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to behold. And the fact that you've now decided to do this podcast and try and build your platform and allow more people to experience this and experience what you've learned about how to hold that, like the way you hold yourself as a tall man as well, the way you hold yourself, just so I don't see you shrinking down, I see you standing up. And it's it's a real gift for me, because there's a part of me that hides away from standing up. So thank you for that. Thank you for modeling that for me. And the other one is going to be a slightly longer blessing, but I feel I need to do it because you asked, and it just came up straight away. And I may cry. That's okay. My father died 2 weeks ago. And I spent the last 3.5 weeks of his life with him all day, every day. I walked him home. And my father wasn't David Aldous name, and he wasn't he said he wouldn't claim to be a spiritual person. He didn't really have a religious practice. He certainly didn't have a spiritual practice. And yet, 10 years ago, when he was looking to retire, He went driving around Suffolk, which is a place his father used to live. His father lived maybe sort of 30 miles away from me. He drove around. He found himself in this pub on 2 separate occasions. And he was like, I guess this is the place. And just bought himself a house in this little village called Hoxton. And then he started looking into his ancestry. Didn't know anything about it. His Ancestry.com got his attention. And it turned out that our direct line of ancestors back to 1400 for 450 years all lived and died within 9 miles of that place. One of them, 350 years ago, was born in that village. And the pub that he went into is 500 years old. So I like to think that my how many greats went into that pub to celebrate the birth of his child. And something my father, 350 years later, felt that. And even though my family then went off to France and then India and then Kenya for 150 years, they went off traveling. Somehow my dad found his way back home. So when I watched him take his dead body out of the house and put it in the back of the van, there was a deep sadness and grief, but then this feeling that my father found his way back home. And what a blessing for that. My ancestors are not a particularly exciting thing. I think there were a bunch of farmers who lived in the beautiful rolling countryside of Suffolk. My dad found his way back. That feels good.
What an honor. Thank you, Gethin, son of David. You truly are a blessing, my friend. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your journey. And thank you for the journey of your lineage finding its way back home, because I've watched you do that same thing for so many men. May you never stop. I love you, my friend.
I love you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.